Hello and welcome to Celtic Down Under. My name is Laura Bradburn and I am joined as always by Liam as we preview the quarter-finals and do a little review of the round of 16. How you doing, Liam?
Good. As you can probably tell from the shirt, I'm hoping that the our friends in Holland are going to do me a wee favour because it's my last chance of winning any money at this tournament.
I think apart from if you're Dutch, you might be in the minority because I do think there's a lot of people want to see Messi do well at this World Cup, or maybe my own biases are coming into that, but we'll get to that in due course. What we're going to do first, I think, is do a little review of the round of 16 and how that went, because not everything went exactly as we thought it would, and it'll be interesting to talk about that. But we'll talk about the Netherlands USA first. I would say perhaps from my watching of it, USA had completely and utterly reached their level, if not slightly exceeded it by getting to the round of 16 when you look at how relatively easily the Netherlands dispatched with them.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to them, but I think, yeah, like you say, they got to that higher level and they got found out.
Yeah.
USA are a work in progress. The good thing is that, there's a lot of players in that team now who are like 23, 24, 26, 27, 28 when the next World Cup comes round.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys at that point might be ready to really do some damage, hopefully.
Yeah, I think, like you say, they're kind of in a perfect position for if they can keep that squad together, if those players in that squad can improve and they can maybe add a couple to it in the next 4 years, given the fact that it's a domestic World Cup for them as well, they're really not in any better place to try and do something significant. And by significant, I mean reach beyond the round of 16, which I don't know how many times, if ever, they've managed to do it. Netherlands looking strong though.
Yeah, yeah, they look. I mean, the Netherlands have been the kind of the sleeper of this tournament. They've just been going about their business quietly and effectively. You know, Spain announced their bombastic burst onto the scene with that 7-0 win,
Mm-hmm.
and then meekly crash out in round two, whereas the Netherlands have just been quietly doing their job effectively, and they haven't looked outstanding, but I wouldn't say they've ever looked particularly in trouble in any game they've played either.
No, I think even with a lot of the other strong teams, England spring to mind, Argentina are another one where you can say that they have certain strengths to their team, but there are also notifiable weaknesses that you think they come up against a better team, they'll be exposed. Netherlands, I feel like are maybe not, like you say, the best team at the tournament, but they're maybe the best balanced across the side, and maybe that will stand them in good stead for going further in the tournament. It remains to be seen.
Yeah,
Look,
I definitely think I'm positive about them for sure, and where they go from here. Because the other good thing is that Van Gaal in his press conferences has been quite laid back and just
yeah,
brushing off a lot of the criticism. I mean, he said to one journalist during the weekly, I don't know if you saw it. The guy basically said to him, "Yeah, you're not playing the Dutch style. You're playing very boring football." And Van Gaal said, "Well, we haven't been beat yet."
yeah,
And they said, "If you don't like it, you can go home." And he
yeah.
said, "Well, no, I've got to stay here and cover the tournament." He said, "Good, I'll see you in the final then."
Listen, I'm quite quick with a comeback from time to time as well, but I wouldn't like to go up against Louis van Gaal. I think he's always got a word for people, which can
Yeah,
can catch you out. So it'll be interesting to see, because I think Netherlands is probably the last major footballing superpower never to have won the World Cup. I can't think of another team where you would go, oh yeah, I would have expected them to win a World Cup in their history. Netherlands is that team, so
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if this is their year, if this is the year that they can do it. Because unlike the USA, I think they are probably entering they do have good young players, don't get me wrong, but a lot of their squad is made up of players approaching, if not over 30 as well, and they are going to enter a slightly transitional period after this tournament, I would say. But we'll see
yeah,
what happens. For our Australian contingent watching, I have to say once again, I'm still eating that humble pie, because even though they went out to Argentina as most people would have expected, they absolutely gave a good account of themselves, and it wasn't the pushover that some might have expected for Argentina.
No, Australia really had a go, and they were very brave, very dynamic, and played well above the level that I think either of us expected that they could.
Mm.
Um, and in doing that, I think they proved, even though their participation is now over, I think they proved that beating, uh, winning the group games that they did was not a fluke.
Yeah.
I think they proved that they got that that berth in the last 16 on merit, and yeah, hopefully they can build on it because they're another nation that is developing a bit like the USA. That 10, 15 years from now, if they continue to develop at the current rate, they should be a team that can compete for the World Cup realistically.
Yeah, because just like the MLS, the A League is improving in standard all the time, and we all know how important a strong domestic league is to the progression of the national team, and it'll be interesting to see if Australia can continue that progression at the same rate as the USA, and maybe make, like say, a bigger stamp on proceedings. We've said before they are relatively regular qualifiers for the World Cup finals, so that's not an issue for them. But it's
Mm.
getting something done when they're there, which hopefully they will do. Looking at the Argentina team, I'm concerned about them. I've been open on this podcast before about my desire for Messi to make this his year. That's utter bias on my part.
Mm.
Nothing suggests to me that they're going to do it, primarily because they are so heavily reliant on him to pull them out the mire at times, and I really don't see them faring well against a stronger team as they will be against the Netherlands in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue. The biggest test they've had so far was Poland, and as we'll talk about in a minute, they're not exactly a team that set the heather alight. So,
No.
um, no, I think that Argentina are probably on their day a better team than the Netherlands,
Mm-hmm.
but Netherlands are more consistent. And as you know, Argentina have already lost to Saudi Arabia in this tournament,
Yeah.
so I think that just shows you that they can be got at by a team that plays to their own strengths and plays to Argentina's weaknesses. And if there's one team that's good at manipulating other teams' weaknesses, it's the Dutch. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the weaknesses for Argentina are defensively. They are reasonably good going forward, but they also aren't scoring a barrel load of goals, and it's kind of, Lautaro Martinez up front for Argentina doesn't seem to have had the best World Cup. Um, Alvarez is a slightly better option, but again, not overly prolific at this stage of the tournament. And I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll talk a little bit more about Argentina and Netherlands when we get round to those fixtures a little bit later on in the show. Looking at France versus Poland, you mentioned about Poland just there. I mean, again, I say this about France, and I say this about England, and I say this about really the majority of big teams who are now in the quarterfinals. They've really not come up against what you would describe as strong opposition for the majority of them, and France really, um, I feel, didn't really get out of second gear against Poland and really took care of them relatively easily.
yeah, I mean that's the thing. The one thing that concerns me as someone who will be cheering for France on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
is that they haven't really had a full-on test yet.
Mm-hmm.
Denmark pushed them for about 20 minutes in the group game, and
Yeah.
then France scored again, and from that point on, they looked relatively comfortable. Yeah, they blew Poland away.
Yeah.
They were on a different planet, really. Mbappe is every bit the world class player that you know he can be, and I think they'll get past England, but I think once you get to the semi-finals, if they come up against like a Brazil or something, that's where they could come unstuck, because we don't know how good they actually are because they haven't been fully tested yet.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with France. They are of course playing England in the quarterfinals, but just reflecting on Poland a little bit before we go on to talk about the
Mm.
quarterfinals, they've really not given a good account of themselves at this World Cup. Most of their star players, like Lewandowski, like Glick, um, uh, like Krzyzewski, this will most likely be their last World Cup. What do you think the future holds for them as a national team? Because it seems like they are slightly over reliant on players that will not be around in the next couple of years, and I don't really know. Maybe it's my lack of knowledge of the Polish game in general, but I don't really know of another star Polish player that's really coming to the fore.
No, but the thing is, if you look at countries with a similar profile to Poland in terms of like size, status of the league, standing in European competition, whatever, obviously pre-war, but Ukraine are an example of a team that can get to a level where they compete consistently at international level.
Mm-hmm.
Poland are usually a good bet to finish second in whatever group they're in qualifying for a Euros or a World Cup. But they're not this kind of threat that they used to be. Going to Warsaw and playing an away game used to be a very intimidating prospect for even the likes of Germany, England, and Spain, but not anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that they need to get back to that. And what might happen is they might, in a sense, do a Belgium. Because if you think, like, Belgium got to the semi-finals in '86, and that was that Belgium team at its peak. They appeared at World Cups sporadically throughout the '90s, but didn't really do any damage. And then you get to the 2010s, and you've once again got a Belgian team that can seriously compete to win the tournament. Probably had their best chance in 2018 and kind of blew it. And now they've got to the stage where they're going to have to rebuild again. And I think Poland is at that same crossroads, because whatever they do at the next tournament is probably going to be without Lewandowski. It's most likely going to be without Glick. And they're going to have to find inspiration from somewhere. But the problem is, you take those two guys out of the team, I think what you've got left is pretty ordinary.
Yeah,
and might not even qualify for the next World Cup. So I think it's a case of wait and see. But if you're a Polish fan, I wouldn't be too despondent if you do end up missing out on the next couple of big tournaments, because you're going to need that perhaps 8 to 10 years to try and completely rebuild the team. And who knows, you could end up coming back like Belgium did.
Yeah, who knows? It'll be interesting to see, and certainly we don't have too long to wait. Rather than the usual 2.5 year wait, it'll only be 18 months before the next Euros, and then 3.5 years before the next World Cup. So perhaps that shortened turnaround time, as much as the delay in getting to Qatar has been a factor for some teams, maybe the shortened turnaround time will mean that certain teams have another go at things at a major tournament, but we will wait and see. The next one up is obviously England versus Senegal, and again, England haven't really faced what I would consider strong competition, but the old saying goes, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and I have to say, as much as it pains me to say it, England are looking strong, and I say that from the point of view of not just the team that goes out on the pitch at the start of a game. I would argue they've probably got one of the strongest benches at the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, if they were playing perhaps Portugal or Croatia or Morocco instead of France in the next round, I would quite strongly fancy them to go to the semi-finals. But I do think they are playing, I think, the second best, but some would argue possibly the best team at the tournament in France. I think Brazil are a little bit better, but there's not much to call in it. And I think that's going to be the end of the road for England, which is unfortunate for them, because they have played well. You've got to give them credit where it's due. And I really do, although, I'm not an England supporter, and I most likely never will be, I do have a lot of sympathy for some of their players, and particularly the manager, because he's Gareth Southgate strikes me as a good man, trying to do his best. I mean, in what other country can you get to a semi-final, then a final, and back-to-back tournaments, and you've still got most of the fan base telling you you're not up to the job?
It's unreal.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And I wonder if it's... I don't know what type of manager it is that they want, but we all know Gareth Southgate as a person is maybe not the most fashionable type of person. But, but I don't know what else they're expecting, because short of winning the thing, which let's be completely honest, they were only a few penalty misses away from winning the Euros. But for a Croatia team who were playing out their skin at the World Cup, who knows what could have happened at the World Cup?
Yeah.
But like you say, I think if that's Steven Gerrard in that job. I think if that's Frank Lampard in that job, I think name numerous ex-players that you want to name.
Yeah.
Somebody who's a bit more fashionable amongst the fans, shall we say.
Mm.
Nobody's having this discussion about whether Southgate deserves to still be in the job or not.
No. I mean, he's achieved more than the likes of, Ericsson or Capello or any of his other great managers did as England manager. You know, those guys had fantastic careers elsewhere, but they did very little with England. And Southgate has, like you say, runner-up in a Euros, which is incredible for a team like England, when I think, with the greatest respect to them, they are a second-tier team as far as I'm concerned. You've got Argentina, Brazil, France that are your top tier. England are in that second tier, along with, like, Spain, Portugal, and Holland, I would say.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think France will probably win it, and we'll go on to discuss it a little bit later. But I don't know. England are worrying me. Let's put it that way. We've got 2 more fixtures to cover on the round of 16. We'll come back to Japan and Croatia in a second, just because we want to focus a little bit more on them, given your ties with Japan. But Brazil, South Korea, a 4-1 victory for Brazil. Again, really not a major problem for them. Went as expected. But you can't really write that off at this stage of the competition. There's so many nerves and teams are so cagey that you can't just say, yeah, that was the result we expected and write it off. Teams have to be commended, I think, as Brazil do in this case, for actually getting the job done.
Yeah, they do. I'm gonna say one thing that's probably going to be a bit controversial, though, and this is going to sound like the ultimate in nitpicking, but from what I've seen of Brazil so far in the tournament, they play absolutely unplayable football in bursts.
Yeah.
But they haven't yet shown they can do it for a full 90 minutes. I mean, think about that game.
Here's my retort to that. Do they need to do it for 90 minutes?
Against Korea, no. Against France or England or Portugal, probably. But as I was going to say, that the Korea game, they were 3-0 up in the first half an hour and were out of sight.
Yeah.
Right? But then if you let's just say in a parallel universe, the score is reset at half time. Korea win the second half 1-0.
Yeah.
And they created plenty of chances to score more than one. And with the greatest of respect to Korea, I was actively cheering for them that night, but they're not a team that should get anywhere near Brazil, realistically.
No, and for me, I mean, it's tough to pick between them and Poland, but I would say maybe the weakest team that reached the last 16.
I'm going to show my Asian bias slightly here, but no, I think Poland were noticeably worse.
Yeah.
And that Korea did beat Portugal to get there.
Yeah.
You're not a bad team if you beat Portugal, even if it is Ronaldo having a tantrum halfway through the game,
Well, exactly. They're now having to deny reports that he threatened to walk away from the World Cup. Now, deny all you like, but his past behaviour suggests that's exactly what he did. Listen, I'm not in the game of holding up false accusations against somebody without proof, but yeah. We all know how he's behaved in the past, but no, I think you're right. Brazil will certainly be one to watch, and they'll come up against a relatively stiff test against Croatia. But we'll discuss that a little bit more. Let's just go, talking of Croatia, to the Japan Croatia round of 16 game. The word heartbreaker was invented for this game, really.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, having to go to school the next day and see all those wee sad faces.
Oh God.
No. And the worst thing, and this was completely unintentional, right? I had this particular class, which I hadn't taught for 2 weeks because they had like a test last week. And we started doing a World Cup quiz, like a kind of PowerPoint thing. And we were going to finish up the quiz in the next class. So we get into the class, everyone's a bit despondent. I say, look, come on, guys, don't worry. Japan played well, Anyway, let's finish up the quiz. Okay, what country is this team? I hit the button, and of course, bloody Croatia comes up.
Oh, no.
And my colleagues looked at me and was like, "Are you at the wind up?" I was like, "No, this was completely random, totally unintentional." But there you go.
And you know, it frustrates me on a couple of grounds. Like, I actually think Japan were certainly involved in some of the most exciting games at the tournament. Their defeat of Germany and their defeat of Spain weren't just big in terms of the result and the shock that it caused. They played well in those games. They played what can only be described as swashbuckling football. They were fearless. And I think from that point alone, I'm a little bit disappointed that Croatia get the better of them, because I don't think they're playing the same brand of football. And that might be my biases showing, but that is how I feel about it.
I think that, put it this way, I would fancy Japan to give Brazil more of a game than I think Croatia will.
Yes.
I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't see them laying a glove on Brazil. Whereas I think Japan could perhaps have maybe just sneaked something, you know?
Yeah. It's difficult because you want to try and analyze it completely fairly and say that that, you know, Japan weren't up to scratch or they weren't matching Croatia, and ultimately the team that goes through deserves it. But
yeah,
I don't know. Croatia for me, I might be out of turn saying this because we've got Morocco to discuss. I don't know. I think Croatia might be the weakest team in the quarterfinals.
Well, you know, I want to take a balanced approach because on this show we are all about balance and neutrality.
Absolutely,
of course, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I no. Look, good luck to Croatia. Winning a penalty shootout takes guts, and they showed guts. So respect them.
Absolutely.
But I don't think the better team went through that night. I really don't.
Absolutely. And just
that's just going to be my position on it. I think Japan were very, very unlucky.
Just looking at the last of the rounds of 16, Morocco overcoming Spain. Listen, Morocco earned that, regardless of what anybody says. They really shut Spain out. But I don't know. It's easy to say this in hindsight, but looking back, I do wonder if everybody got a little bit overexcited with Spain's 7-0 drubbing of Costa Rica and thought, here we go, this is a team really on the up. They never really showed anything like that form in any of the remaining matches, and certainly didn't look like a team that were ever going to break down Morocco in that game.
I mean, look at it this way. In terms of time-wise, we are now halfway through this tournament. 2 weeks down, 2 weeks ago. And I predicted that Spain or Germany would crash and burn at the early stages of the tournament. And ultimately Germany went out in round 1, Spain went out in round 2. So I wasn't that far away.
No, that's true. Let's go on to the quarterfinals then, and we'll look at Morocco first, just to oh no, sorry, we've got one more game to look at that I forgot about actually. Portugal, Switzerland. Portugal were absolutely on fire in that match.
Yep, as you and I both have been saying since the start of these shows, Portugal are a better team when Ronaldo's not in it.
Yep.
He is the best individual in that team, but that's exactly the problem. He's an individual. And Portugal are a better unit when they don't have to depend on him. Yeah,
I think that's fair to say. And I did tweet something, or not tweet something, I sent a message to the Axom group chat of which you are a part the other night, where I said that my dream scenario is Ronaldo doesn't make the starting lineup for another game. He's confined to the bench. They get through to the final. I'm willing to give them that. And they face Argentina in the final, and he has to sit and watch Messi lift the World Cup. That would just... chef's kiss.
And Qatar gets a whole new generation of plant life just on the basis of Ronaldo's tears.
Oh my God!
Everybody wins. That's the end of desertification in the Middle East.
I'm sure he'll be all right drying his tears when he just moves over the road to Saudi Arabia for 200 million a season or whatever it's going to be. But
Well, as they say, money doesn't buy happiness, but it's a lot more fun to cry in a Ferrari than it is on a bike.
That's true. That's true. Looking at the quarterfinals, we've obviously got. We'll talk about Morocco and Portugal since they're the last two teams we talked about. Can Morocco become? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I might have forgotten about a team here. Can they become the first African team in a semi-final?
I believe you're right. I don't think an African team has made it beyond the last 8 before.
Yep.
If I'm thinking correctly, Ghana, Senegal, and Cameroon have got one each.
Yeah.
So far. Yes, I think they can do it, because I think of the big hitters in these quarterfinals, like the ones that the bookies are going to make the heavy favourites, I think Portugal are the most vulnerable.
Yep.
Because of that obvious, shall we say, discontent in the camp. Ronaldo has come out and said it's not an issue. The manager has come out and said it's not an issue. But I noticed that there's not a barrage of Portuguese players leaping to his defence.
No.
They are, sometimes silence speaks a lot more than, a 1,000-word essay does.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite telling that Ronaldo himself has said we are one team, but none of his teammates seem to be keen to jump in and echo that. So yeah, I think Portugal, although they blew Switzerland away, again a bit like Poland, a bit like Korea, Switzerland were one of those teams that were really just in the last 16 to kind of make up the numbers, and you never really fancied them to do much beyond that anyway.
Here's a question for you, just as a kind of response to that. Are we writing off how succinctly they dispatched with Switzerland, considering, Switzerland were in no way exciting during the group stages, but they looked relatively solid. They never looked as if they'd be on the end of a 6-1 hiding from anybody, much less Portugal.
Oh no, Portugal were outstanding, don't get me wrong. I mean, especially after losing their final group game, to come back and demolish their second round opponents with such vigour, really, it shows a lot of character, which is one of the things that I think I and other people have questioned about this Portugal team, is their steel and their character, and they showed that in spades in that game. But I still think there's vulnerabilities there, and I think Morocco, if they approach it the same way they did against Spain, just do not give Portugal a minute's peace. Frustration will kick in, possible bookings, possible red cards, possible penalty kicks, and that's where Morocco can possibly edge it out. No, I really of the quarterfinals that are coming up, I think that's the one that has the highest potential for a shock.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Talking about the potential for a shock or anything like it, they are going to be facing the winner of England versus France. Let's talk about England versus France. France, for our money, for your money certainly, and for mine, are second best, if not the best team at the tournament. England, I think, have scored the most goals at the tournament.
Yeah.
This, I think, is potentially got the potential to be the tie of the quarterfinals. Who do you see coming out on top from that one?
I see France winning it, but I don't see them running away with it. I think it will be possibly a 2-1 or a 3-2 or something like that. I mean, you could have another absolute, like, one of the greatest World Cup ties I ever remember watching live was the England-Argentina game from France '98, and a repeat of that would be most welcome. But I don't think it's going to go to penalties. I think France are too clinical for that. And that England defence has not really been tested yet. And Mbappe, again, with the greatest respect, Kyle Walker, Harry Maguire, Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah.
They don't really quite kind of gel on the same level, do they?
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one. I do think Kyle Walker will start for England, if for no other reason than he's probably the only player England have that could match Mbappe for pace. Now, whether he can still do that at the age that he's at and with the injuries that he's had, I'm not sure. but it's going to be the option that they go with, I think.
Yeah, I think stopping Mbappe is going to be the key to any chance that England have, and he is the player best placed to do it, even though I don't think he will. I think he's got the best chance of doing it.
Let's say England do stop Mbappe. Let's say they put a plan in place that shuts down Mbappe, closes him out of the game. He's not able to have the influence that he's had so far in this World Cup. Do France have enough in their locker with the other players to overcome England Mbappe-less, if you want to put it that way?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Giroud, you've got Griezmann, you've got. That's the thing. Like, Mbappe is the main threat, but he's by no means the only threat. It's not in the sense of, like, you stop Messi, you stop Argentina, right?
Yeah.
You stop Ziyech, you stop Morocco, right? You stop Mbappe, you're not necessarily stopping France. You're just going to make them perhaps change gears a wee bit. No, that's the thing. France look like the most complete team at this tournament, I think. As I said, there's a debate to be had as to whether it's them or Brazil who are the strongest overall, but I think the French unit looks like any one player in that France team could get an injury. And although, obviously losing Mbappe would be a huge blow for them, but I still think they would have enough to win a game without him. Whereas, if Brazil were to lose like Richarlison, or if England were to lose Harry Kane, there's a big hole there in the team. Whereas France would just have to reshuffle the deck a wee bit, and I think they could cope without Mbappe if they had to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it'll be a close game. England will give a good account of themselves because they've had a good tournament so far. Southgate is the type that always makes sure his team's up for a fight. But ultimately, I think France's class will tell. And if I had to put a score on it, I'll say 3-2 to France. There you go.
Excellent. I think there will be goals in it, that's for sure. If for no other reason than I think both defences are reasonably weak and both attacks are the strong point of both teams. So I do agree there's going to be goals, and it will be interesting to see where they come from. Hopefully for the French. And I presume that means that almost by default, without doing too much disrespect to Morocco, we think it will be a France final appearance.
I don't know. I really don't know, because if Morocco get past Portugal, as we think they might, they're going to fancy it. They'll fancy beating anybody if they can get through that. They've already got through Spain, who were, I think 4th or 5th favourites before the tournament started. And, they've shown that they're not out their depth at this level, so who knows? I mean, put it this way, I think that Morocco going up against France would have maybe slightly less chance than England have to have beaten them tomorrow. But they would still have that, for want of a better phrase, the puncher's chance, that if they could just land a blow, they might get the result. Because the one thing Morocco have shown throughout this tournament is you cannot underestimate them. I think Spain took them lightly the other night, and they paid the price for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what happened, and it'll be interesting. I think people will stand up and take notice of that, because there were so many people talking about, even in the first half against Japan, that Spain were looking like they could go on and win the tournament, and here they are out to a Morocco side that nobody gave a chance. So I think people will certainly be giving them a lot more respect than they maybe would have done beforehand, but it remains to be seen. Let's look at the other side of the draw. Let's look at Croatia, Brazil. First of all, I mean, for me, probably the biggest foregone conclusion of the quarterfinals is that Brazil will take this one.
You're probably right. I really, really hope you're wrong, but I think you're probably right. I will be, I'll have my Croatia top on tonight. I'll be cheering for Croatia, despite what they did to Japan.
Yes.
but yeah.
No loyalty in you, Liam. No loyalty whatsoever.
No, I mean, that's a good thing, though, right? There's been a hell of a lot of goodwill back and forth online this week between Croatian fans and Japanese fans. I've got friends in both countries.
Yeah.
And even before the game, the sentiment was, look, if we don't win it, we hope you win it. And most of my Japanese friends are now like, yeah, we want Croatia to win it, because, they worked really hard to beat us, and also it makes the defeat a wee bit easier to take if you can say you were beaten by the best team in the world, you know.
Yeah, well, exactly. The chances of it, I'm not sure being high, but we'll see.
Mm.
And then Netherlands, Argentina, perhaps second to France, England is the round of the tie that
Mm.
I'll certainly be most excited for. Not only for the kind of there's almost a nostalgic feel to it. These two football and super giants with so many greats from over the years. Sadly, so many of them no longer with us, obviously. But
Aye.
you know, I think on form at the tournament, you probably say Netherlands win it, but
Mm.
there's something about this Argentina team that they're just that 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 Saudi Arabia result at the start of the tournament aside, they're just not lying down to anybody, and I don't know which way to call it really.
Well, Argentina have only lost their opening game at the World Cup once before, and that was in 1990 to Cameroon. And
Oh,
Argentina ended up going to the final that year, and came. It was a penalty kick that beat them in the end.
mm-hmm.
That was the only difference. And Lothar Matthäus did an absolutely superb man marking job on Maradona.
Yeah,
But yeah, I really I think that. I mean, we talked about it before that with it being Messi's last tournament and with this kind of being the first tournament since Maradona's passing, there is a kind of a written in the stars kind of feel to it for Argentina.
yeah.
And I like Holland and I like Argentina. I won't really be too upset whoever goes through and whoever goes out, but there is something magical about Argentina. Plus, there's also the prospect of a Brazil-Argentina semi-final, which would just be oh. If the football's crap, at least the fight afterwards will be good.
I actually don't know. I'm planning to look up. I I I don't know if Argentina and Brazil have ever faced each other in the World Cup finals. If they have, somebody let me know. But the idea that it's going to be, because let's not forget, this is far from only Messi's potential last World Cup. This could
Probably
be
Neymar's as well.
probably
Yeah,
Neymar's,
yeah,
and so that the potential that could hold for really, everything being on this is absolutely unreal. And like you say, that's putting aside the historical rivalry between Brazil and Argentina to be the football and superpower from South America. Now, I think if anybody's honest with himself, it's not close in terms of who that is. Brazil take the biscuit every day of the week, but Argentina are always the other team in the conversation, and the amount of pride that would be there. I think, honestly, if it was a Brazil Argentina semi final, one of them knocking the other out would almost be as good as winning the whole thing for them.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, actually, because if it does go that way and you end up with an Argentina Brazil semi final, the final is almost going to be kind of anticlimactic, isn't it? Because after those two have played each other, the winner playing, France, England, Portugal, or Morocco, it's going to feel a bit of a step down from what you've just witnessed,
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting anyway. So I've got to say, after a few days off, I'm really looking forward to getting back into it. The last few days have been strange with no football, and the fact that we've got two big games coming up today, two big games coming up tomorrow, the semi-finals next week, and then the final, I think, is the 18th of December on the Sunday. It's
Yeah.
really going to be a fantastic end to the tournament. And I think, regardless of the shocks that have happened, I don't know about you, Liam, but I'm quite happy to see the football and superpowers, eking it out at the end, at the business end. That famous football and superpower Morocco, obviously, as well.
No, the thing is, like, everybody loves an underdog story, but ultimately, when it matters, it's always the big teams that come through.
Yeah.
Like I always want the World Cup to be shared around, so I always kind of root for the teams that haven't won it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why tonight I'd like to see Holland and Croatia go through. but chances are it'll be Argentina and Brazil that go through.
Yeah.
You know, tomorrow I would like to see Morocco get through. But it's probably going to be Portugal, but you never know. And even then, Portugal's another team that haven't won it before. So, you would still then like to see them. Well, I certainly would like to see them do well if they get beyond Morocco. But no, if it comes down to a Messi-Ronaldo final, my money's on Messi, because Ronaldo's not been at it this tournament at all so far.
Oh, let's hope. My goodness, what a Christmas present that would be. Thank you everybody for watching. We have thoroughly enjoyed doing these shows. Probably only going to be one more show before the end of the tournament. What we're going to do is, between the semi-finals and the final, we'll do a review of the quarters and the semis, and then we'll do a preview of the final, just so that we're not going over the same ground as far as the teams that are concerned, now that there are less of them in the tournament. But you will see us at some point. Look out on the Celtic Down Under Twitter for when that's going to go up. Thank you very much for joining us, Liam. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. It's really helped to make this World Cup a little bit more special than the previous one for me. And the last thing I have to say, unless you've got anything else to say, is Allez les Bleus.
Allez les Bleus. I will second that.
Thanks everybody. Catch you soon.